All right, so we are on the second week of our Lenten series. It's a journey from Galilee to Jerusalem, and today we'll be looking at the parable about the kingdom, about salvation, a story Jesus told to continue bringing about the kingdom of heaven on earth. And this alternative society, that operates exactly the opposite of the world. A place of belonging not based on merit or power, but instead based on the unconditional and non-judgmental love of God. So we'll start with this parable, and it's Matthew 20:1 through 16. For the kingdom of heaven is like a master of a house who went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. This is Jesus' parable, the laborers in the vineyard. After agreeing with the laborers for a denarius a day, he sent them into his vineyard. And going about the third hour, he saw others standing idle in the marketplace and then said to them, "You go in the vineyard too, and whatever is right, I'll give you." So they went as well. Going out again about the 6th hour and the 9th hour, he did the same. And about the 11th hour, he went out and found others standing. And he said to them, "Why do you stand here idle all day?" And they said, "Well, no one's hired us." He said to them, "You go into the vineyard too." And when the evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, "Call the laborers and pay them their wages, beginning with the last up to the first." And when those hired about the 11th hour came, each of them received a denarius. Now, when those hired first came, they thought they'd actually receive more. But each of them also received a denarius. And on receiving it, they grumbled at the master of the house, saying, "These last worked only an hour, and you have made them equal to us, who have borne the burden of the day and the scorching heat." But he replied to them, "Friend, I'm doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for a denarius? Take what belongs to you and go. I choose to give this last worker as I give to you. Am I not allowed to do what I choose with what belongs to me? Or do you begrudge my generosity? So the last will be first, and the first last." I've heard it said, "Are you jealous of my generosity?" So this is this parable, and this is honestly one of the most scandalous and somewhat, it can make you cringe thinking about it because it's so opposite of what we typically experience or have been taught. I love this idea. This way of thinking, though, goes completely against my common sense. The kingdom of heaven is like a person only working 1 hour being paid the same as someone who worked a full day. I don't know about you guys, but that doesn't seem okay. It kind of reminds me of when I worked really hard on an exam in college, and I'd get done with it and I'd be like, "Oh my gosh, I know I got an A on this." And then we get to the point of getting our exams back, and the professor says, "Well, I decided to grade on a curve." And you're like, "Are you kidding me?" Like, I put this much effort into this, and all these people who maybe didn't put nearly as much effort are going to get a grade closer to mine than they should have gotten. They didn't deserve that. They didn't deserve that. But that little feeling of indignation or jealousy that I feel, or resentment because a professor graded on a curve, that's nothing compared to what Jesus is saying. Because grading on a curve, even then, not everybody's getting the same grade, but their grade's getting bumped up. But in this instance, it would be like me doing all the work, getting an incredible grade, and people who just barely squeaked by, and the professor says, "You're all getting an A." That's what Jesus is saying the kingdom of heaven is like. Not the kingdom of heaven somewhere out there, but the kingdom of heaven that he is bringing about on the earth. That messes me up. I don't like that. And Jesus calls it the kingdom of heaven. The vineyard owner, who obviously represents God, is more interested in giving the workers what they need rather than what they earned. Isn't that interesting? So, according to Jesus and his goal to bring about the kingdom on earth from Galilee to Jerusalem, so according to him, As followers of Christ, this alternative society of belonging, not based on merit, is not a meritocracy. You don't get what you get because you earned it. You get because you need it and because of extravagant generosity. Okay, doesn't that fly in the face of our pull yourself up by your bootstraps, earn your keep individualism? Yes. But that's something Jesus wanted for those early Christians living in communal, more connected culture. We can't possibly live like that because our lifestyle is so much different. We have way more wealth. We have a much more spread apart society. We're not all living in smaller communal villages or even multiple families in houses very often. So we can't possibly live like that. So what is Jesus trying to say here? And for that matter, everything I've done, I've earned, I deserve it. And Jesus says the kingdom economy on earth looks more like us all living with extravagant generosity. Not earn your keep, not pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And of course, this isn't just about money, but what better way to get our attention than messing with our wallets, right? That's the part that really gets me. Because Jesus knows that's the part, that's honestly the place where we put a lot of our energy and sometimes it can become an idol and we focus a lot on it. And Jesus says, guess what? The kingdom of heaven is not a meritocracy. The kingdom of heaven is not a place you belong because you earned it. The kingdom of heaven is a place of extravagant generosity. And of course, this isn't just about money. It's not about money only. No. This parable, as Brian Zahnd in the Lenten devotional I'm going through reiterates, is designed by Jesus to provoke that Pharisaical ire, he says, or anger over those who believe they deserve the love of God more than others. This is a scandalous parable. Jesus messes with our notions of American rugged individualism that we've all grown up with, that I grew up with, and you see it in the movies and the TV shows and the books we read. This idea that you just need to pull yourself up. You've got this. It's for you. You earned your keep. Now go get it. And obviously, Jesus is speaking to that. No, of course, Jesus isn't saying, you shouldn't work hard for what you have. But he's saying, even if you work hard, that doesn't mean that you deserve or that your merit alone allows you to live an extravagant lifestyle inside of the kingdom economy. It means that we are extravagantly generous to those who don't have what we have. So everybody who's in need is taken care of. This parable kind of makes most of us uncomfortable. And if it makes you uncomfortable, don't worry. I feel it too. That's because Jesus says it and it runs against the grain of what most of us have been taught to believe. I don't know if any of you know the famous pastor and author Rick Warren, who wrote the book Purpose-Driven Life in churches in the 90s and even past that, used it for small group studies and sermon series and campaigns. What he said about this is really interesting. He has this to say about rugged individualism, and I think it goes a long way in helping inform why this parable is relevant today and timely in our church. He says this: America was built on rugged individualism, and today that has evolved into a culture of narcissism. And before we push that thought, that judgment onto the world, let's remember who Rick Warren is talking about here. It's not the world he's talking about. He's talking about the church. But God didn't create you to live for you. If you want to follow Jesus, you have to put aside your selfish ambition. This makes me squirm a little bit. I don't know about you guys. The vineyard owner gives the workers what they need, not what they deserve. And that sounds a whole lot like welfare. But stay with me, because this isn't some Marxist or socialist ploy unless you think Jesus was a socialist. This isn't about that. This is about extravagant generosity. And I can't help that Jesus said these things. And it's not just about extravagant generosity in one moment. It's about extravagant generosity for all times, yesterday, today, and forever. The group of workers paid last were angry, not based on any injustice they suffered, but because their discontent, resentment, they didn't lose anything. They actually didn't lose anything, because the ones that were only there for a little bit got paid the same. They didn't lose anything. They still got paid fairly. And really, the only one who suffered loss in this parable is the vineyard owner. If we fear that someone we deem as less deserving than us will be made equal to us based on their need in God's love, we're still operating outside of kingdom economy, outside of the kingdom of heaven. That's from Brian Zahn. And let's ask ourselves this question. When we read this parable, who do we usually place ourselves with? Do we place ourselves with the workers who were there all day, or the one who came at the last minute? I'm assuming most of us place ourselves with, or resonate the most with, the worker who was there all day, right? What if we were actually also the ones who are only there and worked for an hour, who don't get what we deserve, but what we need? And then this comes full circle back to the Beatitudes. And I'll finish with this. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is what? The kingdom of heaven. So in this parable, if we realize that we're not just the worker who worked all day, but we are also the worker who only worked for an hour and have been given exactly what we need. That's extravagant generosity. That's grace. And once we realize that, once we pay attention and recognize who we really are and how much we really need, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And that's what Jesus says. Let's pray. Dear God, sometimes we are those people we believe earned your love. And sometimes we are those who are surprised by your extravagant generosity. And in the story of the prodigal son, we are the older brother, and sometimes we're the prodigal son. No matter what, we are unconditionally loved. I know that. God, help us with our resentment and our judgment of others. Thank you for your grace. You know our deepest, darkest thoughts and desires. I know that. And you know our dreams and our hopes. You know our fears. Yet the psalmist is the one who says your love reaches to the heavens and your faithfulness to the skies. As this parable led conviction for me, I pray that conviction for myself and others will lead to transformation, not to shame or condemnation or guilt or even anger. I pray that conviction will lead to freedom, not oppression. I pray that conviction will lead to greater love and to greater acceptance of others. Knowing that even though some have worked only the hour, that we should not sit in discontentment because of your extravagant generosity. I thank you for extravagant generosity. I thank you for it today. And I thank you for it as it covers our entire lives through eternity. In your heavenly name, amen.